Hey everybody, Ed here with the Digital Digest, and today I wanted to share a quick demonstration of the Sony CyberShot DSC QX100. Now, as you may have noticed, I've got the Galaxy S3 on the left and the Galaxy Note 2 on the right, and the whole goal of the QX line is to enhance your smartphone camera capability. So instead of upgrading your smartphone, why not just upgrade the camera? And that's exactly what you get here for $499.99. You're looking at the exact same Carl Zeiss 3.6 times optical f1.8 zoom lens found in the RX100 and Mark II, and then you've got the exact same 1-inch sensor you'll find in the Mark II. So $500 buys you a lot of camera. Of course, no viewfinder, that's what your actual smartphone is for, or your tablet. And then because you have NFC capability besides Wi-Fi, you also have a little bit more of a seamless operation when pairing it with NFC-enabled devices. So both the Note 2 and the S3 or S4, pretty much any Samsung or Sony phone at this point does have NFC integration, but of course make sure that you do have it. This can, of course, also work with iOS just using Wi-Fi. I'm going to demo the NFC connectivity as well as traditional Wi-Fi syncing with the QX today. So a lot of camera here, as I mentioned, despite its form factor. No viewfinder. You do have a little LCD screen here for readout of battery capacity because this can actually be used on its own with the zoom toggle and shutter release button, access to your micro SD card and USB port right there on the side. But let's get down to business. So this included bracket will allow you to mount this onto your phone of choice, and it'll support up to 5 inches in width. So the Note 2, unfortunately, is a no-go. It's not going to work out. As you can see, this extends, and it is spring driven, or at least it seems that way because it retracts quite easily, and essentially that's going to allow you to mount it to your phone of choice. But before I actually mount this to the Galaxy S3, I just wanted to show how an iPhone user, even though I don't have an iPhone or an iOS app to actually show you what that interface looks like, I do expect that the Play Memories app, at least especially from what I've seen, is very, very similar. A little bit different in formatting, but otherwise the experience is the same. So with that said, if you were using your iPhone, you would go ahead and open up the Play Memories app. You would see something very similar to what we're seeing here, where it essentially just reminds you to please turn on your QX device. Hit the power button, which is recessed in order to avoid mispresses. And there you can see it already, detected it, connected, and there we have it, already shooting as we speak, live right there, and in focus. Not sure that it'll be made out since the QX is actually the in-focus device, but if I bring the QX back a little bit, you should see everything is in focus. Or even if I just focus directly on the Note 2, you should be able to see that everything is in focus. Give it a moment there, trying to see if it'll pick it up. But it's still not picking up. It is in focus here, I can tell you that much. Certainly in focus there, and that's probably the best way for me to demonstrate that, and that's where I'll keep it. So that's what an iPhone user is going to go through, not the focusing problem, because I just was too close to the actual subject matter. But in terms of syncing, fairly simple. Now if I go ahead and shut this off and back out of the application, I'm now going to demonstrate what the NFC experience is like, and then later also show you the NFC syncing with the Note 2, because I found that it's faster. That could have to do with the NFC chip itself or the Wi-Fi chipset. It's also faster than the connection with the Nexus 7, so that's something interesting that I have noticed. But let's go ahead and get down to the actual pairing. So first of all, you can see you heard the beep, it turned it on, so it opened up the application. I'm now going to open up the actual brackets and mount the phone, which I will do off camera just because I want to make sure not to damage anything. And it is a little bit tight, I will say, the bracket. There's no question that 5 inches is the max on the bracket. You also want to make sure you're not hitting any of your buttons that are integrated into the phone itself. But there you have it. I've got it mounted on the Galaxy S3, and this is pretty much what the experience is going to look like. So you've got your integrated, brand new, high-end, almost RX100 Mark II just built in to the camera itself now. Of course, it's not literally built in, but that's the way it works. And another thing I noticed that's interesting is that when you actually turn the camera, meaning the QX, it'll actually recognize orientation. So for those of you who tend to occasionally shoot things upside down, and then when you get home, I know that may not be a majority, but then get home and find out that all of your content is upside down and you'll have to turn it. Specifically, I'm speaking about video. Obviously, stills are easy to flip. The camera seems to auto-detect when you've actually flipped the lens. So that's a nice touch, something that's another thing that I recently noticed with this brand new QX lens camera. And then the actual picture taking, fairly simple. You're just going to go ahead and hit the shutter button. It'll then basically copy a 2 megapixel version of that to the phone, or original, depending on what you select. Then give you the option to go back or share. If I go ahead and hit back, I'll show you the setting menu as well. You can see relatively broad list, at least when it comes to a smartphone camera upgrade, because there's nothing else like this on the market. That's what makes it revolutionary. And we're using it here with an old phone, obviously. This is not a Galaxy S4, this is an S3. So it just goes to show you there is a very broad range of compatibility. But that is pretty much what the experience looks like and offers, whether you're on Android or iOS. And playback will take you to a subfolder. Your zoom works relatively seamlessly, very little lag. As you can notice, as soon as I'm turning my wrist here, we're seeing it pretty much in live view. We're not really seeing any hesitation. So that's definitely a good thing. That's what you want to see out of this. And at least it appears as if it performs relatively seamlessly, especially when you're using the NFC. And that's not to say that Wi-Fi was not able to very quickly connect. It was, but the whole point is that you do have that extra added ability to really instantly launch everything. Of course, you will still need to mount it to the camera, so iPhone users have that going for them. If you are going to mount it to the camera, the NFC is practical, but once the lens is extended, I do find it a little bit more difficult to actually mount the camera at that stage, because after all, you've got the added length, not that it's that much, of the actual lens. Zooming in and out with the manual control can also still be done on this camera while it's mounted. This is something that the other Wi-Fi enabled cameras from Sony are not capable of. So RX100 Mark II, NEX5R, 5T, the NEX6, you cannot actually do the touch zoom feature that's found on the new QX line, nor can you actually use manual controls on the camera. So if you were working with the RX100 Mark II and using Wi-Fi, you would not be able to use the actual zoom ring to zoom. You'd have to stick with using the actual interface right here. But on this QX camera, we're able to use both. So it's another interesting little nuance that I've picked up on. With that said, let me go ahead and get out of this and detach it and show you how quickly it syncs with finally the Note 2, the only phone that I have that it can't actually work with, because that will probably demonstrate the point I was just making before about the actual speed with which the device will actually connect and launch. So basically what that equates to is that you have a variation in performance based on the hardware it's being paired with, which is nothing shocking. In fact, it's to be expected, but I don't think the average user will necessarily think about that. So I've got my Note 2 right here. I'm going to go ahead and just put the contact point together. And there you can see it's already launched, opened up. And there we have it. So from what I've noticed, it seems like the Note 2 has almost on the Nexus 7 about a 5-second edge at least, a lot closer next to the S3 that I just demoed, but the Note 2 definitely has a perceivable advantage when it comes to how quickly it's going to actually operate with the QX100, and it's safe to assume that you're going to find the same thing on the QX10. So overall, really liking what I'm seeing so far. Interface is solid, just building off of Sony's Wi-Fi enabled past that they have with all the camera models I mentioned before that already have Wi-Fi enabled control, which of course already work with iOS and Android devices alike. You just have to have the Play Memories app. Again, if you have NFC, you have that extra added bonus of having instantaneous use of this. Of course, that's if it's not actually mounted to a camera. And overall, I am sad that they did not actually support the Note 2 on the bracket, because the Note 2 with its larger screen, in my opinion, makes for an even better overall viewfinder for this device. But keep in mind, the whole premise is the actual form factor, so I'm not going to excuse Sony on excluding the Note 2. I think it actually does a disservice to Sony themselves. They actually limited the number or the pool of prospective buyers to essentially more mainstream devices. Not that the Note 2 isn't mainstream, but in terms of sheer sales numbers, the Galaxy line, specifically the S4, this is the S3, and of course the iPhone. I think those are the two real targets, even though Sony does make their own phones, which are also great matches for this, but quite frankly outperform the iPhone and Samsung phones alike when it comes to imaging with their own built-in sensors. But with that said, pretty much covers this demo of the QX100. Really wanted to demonstrate it with phones, not just a tablet, and give a real-world demo of how it will work for iPhone users and NFC-enabled phones alike. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to post them. And of course, as usual, please feel free to subscribe. Later.